Welcome to the Blockbusters and Birdwalks podcast. I am the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. Today we have a conversation with a friend, Ed Rosa.
That's me. Hi. My filmmaking partner and I have a YouTube channel, Toothless Richard Productions, where you can see a number of our short films.
They really shouldn't hold the Oscars until 10 years or more after those films were released, because so many films that are now regarded as important were overlooked.
About 20 years ago, while teaching classes devoted to broadcast media, I uncovered the term mumblecore. It stuck with me as a good and accurate phrase to describe a trend that we were all of us seeing in mass media. So that's how I arrive at the Puffy Chair. And in brief, it's the story of a guy named Josh whose musical career has failed. He's trying to become a promoter. He has a girlfriend who he's serious about, but their relationship is in the background, clearly at one of those crisis points all relationships go through. Are they going to stick together? Are they going to break apart? And the thing that makes the whole thing go is he has found on eBay a nostalgia piece of furniture that's a puffy chair like his dad used to have, and he wants to pick it up for his father while driving south from his home to see his folks in Atlanta and deliver this as a birthday present for the old man. He intends for this to be a solo adventure, but the girlfriend's a little bit needy. He accepts the neediness, invites her. They stop off at his brother's place partway down. The three end up carrying all the way down to Atlanta this puffy chair, and they have misadventures until finally the central couple don't seem to last.
I don't remember how the hell I heard about mumblecore, because it was when I was working at Blockbuster and we got in Baghead, and I remember seeing it on the shelf, and the title instantly stuck out to me as a fan of CB4, because there's this part when they're trying to figure out, like, before they become gangster rappers, and they're going through these other gimmicks, and one of them is they wear like shower caps. The Baghead! The Baghead! The Baghead! I ended up watching it, and I couldn't tell you anything that happened. I don't remember it at all. I just remember being aware that it was mumblecore and not really being super impressed. And also, at that time, not really being able to kind of put my finger on what it was. I don't know that that's a great name for whatever movement it is.
Yeah, I think it's a poor name. And mumbling is not something I aspire to. I dislike it in others. I really dislike it in myself. So that would be an aesthetic a person goes for. So it's an inaccurate handle.
Nobody mumbles in this.
Right, it's perfectly clear what's going on.
Everybody can totally, enunciates perfectly well.
And the emotional truths that are unraveled make me uncomfortable because they're truths. And they're executed pretty well by a group of performers and filmmakers who are learning how to do things, and they improve across time. I know that to be the case because they're all still involved in mass media projects.
Yeah, I just saw Mark Duplass on the red carpet somewhere for something with him and his wife.
Right, who is this actress who he co-stars with in this movie?
Oh, okay.
I think they met in school and were dating. I'm not sure if they were married yet, but that's part of the poignance of now knowing things that we now know about the Duplass brothers in the years since then, that this is his wife. And they were acting together in an early performance that they engineered for themselves to be a low-budget kind of a thing where they could do with intimate people, their friends and the like, to make this thing go. But that is his missus.
Okay.
And
yeah, well, they're still together.
Right. They still remain married, and they've got some children together. They've both had mutually helpful careers, sometimes overlapping, sometimes collaborating, sometimes with different screen partners and different projects. But yeah, it's kind of a sweet thing that way.
So then the Duplass brothers are to mumblecore like what Scott Joplin is to ragtime. Like, we call it ragtime, but it was really, ragtime was like pretty much only Scott Joplin's compositions.
That's not a bad analogy, and I think that's roughly correct. Now, what I think they take and what they inspire is centrally just this, that you can use inexpensive camera technology, and you can use the people in your immediate circumstance, whoever they may be, and you can make a movie.
I do really appreciate that. I liked this much more than I remember liking Baghead, and I felt there was much more value in this, because for only $15,000, that's kind of the dream for me. I don't know if it's just the situation that I've sort of come up in but it always just seems so overcomplicated that it seems impossible, and I also hate it.
But then when you're doing the thing, it's enjoyable. But you got to get in the zone where you can be doing the thing, and not all of the sort of ramps that get in the way of on-ramping you to the highway of the movie making.
Right.
Expense, equipment, acquisition, leasing spaces, rental agreements, all of the stuff, right?
Yeah. Like the idea that like we could just like, you know, grab a camera, get in the car, and just make a movie.
And just make it this weekend if you want to.
And you know, not have to worry about like, you know, all the lighting and the, you know, just all of the little particulars that, you know, you have when you're making a movie. You have to worry about.
Right.
And it's, I mean, not that they didn't have to worry about it, but it just seems like clearly this was, you know, more effortless in terms of the technical rigorousness of this and what they needed to. I mean, obviously they're not having, you know, a crew of hundreds on a budget of $15,000.
They still have they have a crew. They have a recognizable credit sheet at the end roll when the movie is done, so we can see they did have people working for them and with them, probably at very low pay. I think I read that the principal performers were each given $100 a day as their earnings for being professional actors. Because this was a professional idea. We are going to pay, however modestly, for the talents of the people involved. And I think that's a great aspiration.
Yeah.
One thing to just point out, in my research, I uncovered that this movie, it was released to theaters. It did earn money. It earned back everything that it cost, and then some. But it cost such a modest amount. You pointed out $15,000, which is the figure I also found, which was largely fronted by their parents, giving their two sons, Mark and Jay, some help to get started this creative career that each of them were aspiring to.
Is this their first film?
It might be their first feature. I think they experimented with a number of shorts they made through the years of childhood. So in that way, it overlaps with how a lot of filmmakers get their start.
Yeah.
I mean, you're given a video camera when you're a middle schooler. You have access to grandma's tools or whatever it is, and you start making things.
Yeah, you got 2 VCRs.
Right, and you go back and forth because you can edit, you know. But they come up in an interesting moment. They're approximately our age, you and I. They are therefore involved with human experiences that overlap with our human experiences. And one of the things that happened is the democratization of audiovisual technology in the 1990s because of the upswell of digital video technologies that came into the consumer place. So in 2005, when this movie is showcased at Sundance early in the year, and it spends time trying to find a distributor. Doesn't
a year and a half.
Right. Doesn't come out till 2006. That was a period when I was totally into like caring for an infant. And one of the things that I used to do with her is go to the big box electronics stores, whether it was Fry's or Best Buy or their equivalent.
The Good Guys.
Right. And go park next to their TVs to sort of be amazed by how large TVs were, how flat they were becoming.
Circuit City.
Totally. I would do that, right. And that aisle of TVs usually abutted the aisle of cameras and of camcorders and all of the like. And I was just suddenly amazed by how they were expensive, multiple thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But that's a world away from the old-fashioned high-end film cameras that I was exposed to when I was a student, trying to learn what the film industry was all about, where it was completely possible for a person to rent $1,000 a day or buy a camera for 6 figures to buy one, let alone all of the material, and then to do all the processing. And I thought, there's no way that a reasonable person will ever be able to do that. I know nobody wealthy enough to say, Garrett, here's a $250,000, enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
But you could, and I did know people who did this. They would open a credit line at Circuit City, go buy a camera, use it for a weekend shoot, return it, and get their money back. Right? That was a way people worked their way through film school in my time. And consequently, the price only went down and the quality of the tool only went up. So while I'm letting my kid watch this animated binge of recycled cartoons that will keep her amused for a little while, at an air conditioning break on a hot day, I'm overlooking at the JVCs and the Panasonics and the Sonys thinking, oh man, I could get one of these for $3,000, come up with a project, and by the end of the month, I could have footage for a feature film.
Right.
So there's that memory from 2005, 2006, which is how old this movie is. There's another memory I have, and it's when Mark Duplass was doing a set of press junkets to promote a book he and his brothers had written, I think in 2018, called Like Brothers, by Jay and Mark Duplass. And in that book, they laid out their whole principle of how it is that you make a movie in their way of doing things, kind of as a model for others, but also to explain themselves, because they had risen to a level of real success.
That would actually be pretty interesting to read.
I haven't read it, but his remarks stayed with me. I'm driving across town listening to him. Like, oh, I know that guy. I've seen him in Zero Dark 30 and other things, right? As an actor.
He's in that?
He's got a small part, right. He supports his independent career with a mainstream career.
I had no idea.
Bounces back and forth. He's conventionally handsome in certain ways. He can be lit well. He can be a pretty serious, very good actor. He can also be a weird goof and all things in between. He's a talent. His pitch was, you need to take what you have, that you own, that you can control, and restrict the whole of what you are making to that set of objects, people, and things. Mm-hmm. And so he gave the example referring to Puffy Chair. We had a Puffy Chair. We had a van. We had some friends. I have living parents. And we can all go on the highway if we got a van.
Yeah.
So what can we do with that as our frame? And if that's the frame, those are the fixed objects that have to be used. They have to be used over and over because that's what you got. They're free. They're already here.
Yeah, you got them.
You don't need to buy them. You don't need to secure them. You don't need to rent them, buy them, or build them. So invent around what you already possess. And that really stuck with me because so much of learning to be a writer for movies, so much about judging the quality of movies that you experience is how well imagined or how built those in-universe experiences are. Mm-hmm. His was the reverse. Don't invent anything. Just take your life apart and discover what's exploitable and what you can use right now, but most of all, what you can do quickly with the money you've got.
Right.
And if you don't have any money, well, what you've got is your time, and maybe you can borrow a little bit, because, look, that's what we did. Fortunately, we have parents who had enough bread to say, hey, kids, go off and have a good adventure. We wish you luck. And then you have enough success, you can pay them back and do the next project.
Yeah.
That is a great model.
Yeah.
Most of us have credit. Most of us can sink into Uncle Visa's wallet to go get some equipment. Now, that's not the right way to do things, in quotes, the right, unquote, way to do things, but it is a way to get a creative field started. If you just need one key piece of equipment, which for many of us in the movie industry, it's a camera. Mm-hmm. And then secondarily, once you've got something, it's the computer where you're going to edit it. That's how things are done. So, along all of those levels, I think the Puffy Chair is remarkably good at using a couple of fixed things that the Duplasses just had at their disposal.
So, do we know how much of this was scripted and how much of it was improvised?
I think it was heavily improvised about a basic frame. Let everybody pop off, given that we're going to have a drunken campfire scene and there's going to be a wedding. Okay, and that's in the movie. So, okay, what would happen? What are the vows you would say? How would you make this a serious event? How would you approach this? Please don't look into the camera lens, but otherwise enjoy yourself.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. That's kind of like where I get kind of scared. Like, I'm always like wanting to like meticulously script everything. I'm always fascinated by stuff that is largely improvisational, but that succeeds as well.
Yeah.
I'm really curious how much, what kind of parameters they were given within which to perform and
the
stuff like that.
concrete answers to those kinds of questions I can't offer, but I have a guess that they had a beginning point, journey from the character that Mark Duplass plays, named Josh, this failed musician trying to turn a corner in his life, who's got a girlfriend, Emily, played by Katie Eselton. There's going to be a brother, there's going to be some other people to meet along the way, but you start there. This couple's relationship that gets shifted when the road trip happens. Okay, so the road trip happens. What are the beats that they need to pass through in this road trip? How long is it going to be? And that's defined for us. They're going up from the New York metro area down to Atlanta. They're going to make a stop halfway through and so on. There are these beats. And once that's settled, improv, man, which I know is operating without a net, it feels weird. I agree. If I'm going to write something, I need to have it right down to the terminal punctuation mark and observe the. If the word "the" is there, pronounce it.
Yeah, I do, because like my dialogue, I will write very like specifically, but like on set, if actors, I won't be super precious about it
it's
unless
not out of. It can be out of.
Right.
Out of can be out of.
Right, yeah. But if somehow they're changing it in a way that makes it so like now the joke is diminished or it's right. It's got to be this.
And I think that this group, centering on Jay as the co-writer and the director, and then Mark as the co-writer and star, they were really comfortable just letting it fly. And I know that to be the case when you look technically at the movie. So much zooming happens on screen.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking that. I'm like, so I don't know when The Office started, but I'm like clearly like
a little bit after.
I wouldn't be surprised to find out like that The Office was like pitched by the Duplass brothers.
Well, so here's the set of connections, right? Mindy Kaling was one of the creative prime forces behind The Office as one of its writers, who split off from that show and became a Mindy Project person,
right? Yeah,
because that was her show.
Yeah, my girlfriend loves it.
She hired the Duplass brothers to be characters in that universe.
Oh, okay, wow.
Who are rival doctors to her central doctor. And they have a secondary story, which is kind of funny, because I had known who they were by the time I was watching the Mindy Project. And so you're correct to notice that technical choice that rolls through both this movie and those TV shows, although the Mindy Project's a bit more polished than is The Office.
Oh, I'm sure.
Fixed camera positions and a more traditional setup. I mean to point out that in this movie, you can have a fixed sense of what's going to happen, but the camera that they're employing, that Jay Duplass is directing, is not fixed. It's moving all over the place.
Yeah.
Frequently, shots are just out of focus, and an actor doesn't really step into the focal plane quite right. The camera moves towards them to find it, or it zooms. This is not a ding against amateurish versus professional conduct, although it has that edge to it. It's not unlike how I look when I'm standing behind a camcorder trying to record a birthday party.
Right.
But it's raised up to the level of that's the point. It has a quality of the everyday that leads these performers sometimes to startling revelations of emotional truths which are uncomfortable.
That kind of camera work, how sometimes it really works, and other times, like, it's really obnoxious.
Well, one of the ways that gets minimized, or it can become more palatable, the overall length of the movie is short. This is a short movie.
It is.
Even so, I watched it in pieces because I just felt myself being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised how sort of, moving it kind of was and how realistic. I don't know, because these are both like totally flawed people who really, the inability of their relationship to succeed, the fault really lies kind of on both of them. And that's something that is very true, like, in life.
Well, I think that's part of the discomfort. Because, whenever I have those feelings, really hard likes, really hard dislikes, I do want to put up the mirror and say, Garrett, what's going on here? And what I think I peeled back, these two young people who are late 20s, maybe they're approaching 30, something like that, are not unlike a lot of people in that station, especially if they haven't found jobs, i.e. careers, that define them.
Right. They're
just bumping into stuff. And it's put a real point in this movie through the foil character of Rhett, played by Rhett Wilkins, who is the brother of Josh. Rhett has an independent apartment, although the reading that I have on the character is that that's because the parents seem wealthy enough to support both of their children with stipends or help or whatever it might be, even though they live in different cities. Rhett just seems to be a complete weirdo.
Yeah.
And like an irredeemably weird weirdo.
Yeah.
Like no relationship with how the outside world works, its rules. For example, when they roll into his place, he's hiding in the bushes to surprise his brother. And this seems to be a regular behavior, which plays weird when you experience it. And you experience it through the perspective of Emily, who's never met Rhett before. She's just heard Josh talk about his dear brother. They bring pizza to have a little reunion in Rhett's living room that has no furniture. So they're eating off the floor, and he's dipping into the pizza, pulling toppings off with his fingers.
Right.
It's objectionable behavior because it's food.
Yeah.
Don't touch everybody's food. But he lacks sort of the accoutrement of what adulthood is.
Yeah, there's a certain sort of socialization he kind of doesn't have.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a friend like that once who was...
Well, I think we all have friends like that. And some of us have been these people.
Yeah, like you love them dearly, but like at the same time, you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, they just lack some kind of understanding of how things work. I found myself, I would get mad at this dude all the time because he would just do the stupidest stuff. Because I can't explain why you're supposed to follow rules. I just know you're supposed to follow them.
It makes things easier if you just agree to them.
And when somebody challenges that and I can't articulate why they need to follow the rules, then I feel even worse because not only does their inability to follow the rules irritate me to no end, but I also now feel like I'm not even sure that I'm right. So you find yourself, being, just like in this, equally, you love them, but they also can just be so enraging.
At the same time, this character, Rhett, has a few moments where he is the moral core of what's happening. He's able to recognize in his brother Josh that you're misbehaving. What you're doing is disagreeable, or what you're doing doesn't have foundation, or what you're doing should be arrested right here, and you should think about what you were doing. You have this woman who's devoted to you, and you're mistreating her, not because you're beating her up, because it's not that kind of a story, but that you're finding ways to not commit to her, and maybe you ought to. That's put in one of the little bits they go through, is Rhett goes wandering at a movie theater and meets a woman who he wants to marry within minutes. And they kind of conduct a ceremony drunkenly over a campfire, and then the next day Rhett leaves her behind crying and comes back to the journey of the trio in the van with no real regret, like it wasn't going to work. Well, you knew her for 20 minutes, so of course it wasn't going to work. And Josh knows that's what's going to happen. Emily's sort of disgusted at both of the brothers. And again, it's this refusal to grow up into being a, quote, responsible, unquote, person.
Right.
And there is a way that a lot of people are arrested in early adulthood while they bump into things. And a lot of those people who are arrested in early adulthood trying to find their way are arrested with other people who are sort of their captives, often through romance.
Mm-hmm.
You tie all that off and you just sort of drop this in front of yourself some years after you've heard of mumblecore and you double back to it to uncover what's there. What I'm left with, as I started with in this conversation, is I find this to be an unpleasant movie. But I'm really proud that it exists for the model it provides. And I'm proud of the Duplass brothers. And I mean that in this funny way. I've never met them. And like they're seeking my approval, they're not.
Yeah, right.
But I have this paternal feeling of being proud of them.
Mm-hmm.
They found a way to do a thing. They made a movie.
Yeah.
Have I made a movie for $15,000 that was distributed through Sundance and then became a very, very modest commercial release? No, I have not. I don't know if I could. I doubt it. And they found a way. And I congratulate them for it. Even though the result I find difficult. And I had to pause myself in watching it. That doesn't mean that they didn't do something wonderful.
Yeah, and it's also very funny, which I appreciate. If it hadn't have been, I don't know that I would be looking back on it as fondly as I am.
In the end of the movie, when they make it to Atlanta and we see the character Josh greet his parents with his brother Rhett, we see the Duplass parents. There they are. And because I've developed a parasocial relationship with Mark Duplass in particular in the years since 2005, I've seen other of his movies and TV shows and various programs and so on. I'm touched by seeing his folks. Mm-hmm. There they are. But they have a sit-down, father and son, having a beer on the deck, like the son, Josh, asking for advice. Like, how did you know it was going to work with Mom?
Right.
And we know that's because he's wrestling with whether it's going to work with Emily.
Mm-hmm.
And it concludes, of course, it doesn't. They break up.
Right. And that's the other thing about relationships. It's funny, having been in them myself and watching other people, how long people will cling to something that's obviously not going to work and wondering why.
It's so beautiful. I live in the sea. It's so beautiful.
This is Blockbusters and Birdwalks, a conversation between Garrett Chaffin-Quiray and
Ed Rosa.
Boop boobity doo.